Lonely rancher bought a deaf girl sold by her drunk father, then realized she heard. He sold her for a silver coin and a bottle of whiskey. The dust still clung to her skin when the wagon rolled into Blackwater. Not the kind of dust that settles after a storm, this was the dust of burning wood, of charred rafters, of something alive turned to ash. Her hair was matted with it. Her bare feet were cracked and bleeding. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't even blink when Jed kicked the side of the wagon and spat on the ground beside her. Thomas stood on the porch of his ranch house, hands resting on the worn rail. He'd seen men sell their children before. Seen them trade flesh for drink, for bullets, for a night's rest in a saloon bunk. But this was different. She wasn't crying because she was afraid. She was silent because she had nothing left to say. Jed wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "She don't talk," he grunted. "Ain't heard a word since the fire." Thomas didn't ask what fire. Didn't ask why her clothes were too big for her frame. Didn't ask why her wrists were tied with rope that had been soaked in whiskey, enough to make a man dizzy just to smell it. He just nodded. $5, Jed said. Thomas reached into his coat. Pulled out the coin. Tossed it. Jed caught it between two yellowed fingers. Smiled like a dog that found a bone. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. The girl sat in the wagon, still bound. Her eyes followed Thomas as he stepped down from the porch. Barefoot. Silent. Still as stone. He walked over, untied the ropes. The leather creaked. The knots gave way. She didn't move. He lifted her out. She didn't resist. Didn't flinch. Just let him carry her like a sack of grain. That night, he lit a fire outside the cabin. Stacked bread on a tin plate. Set it beside her on the step. Water in a dented cup. She stared at the food. Then at him. Then back at the fire. He sat across from her. Didn't speak. The wind picked up. Dust swirled around them like ghosts dancing. She reached for the bread. Took one bite. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. As if each crumb was all she'd ever get. He watched her eat. And somewhere, deep in the quiet between the crackling flames and the distant howl of a coyote, he swore he heard her breathe. Not just air. But sound. Like a whisper buried under 6 feet of dirt. He didn't mention it. He never did. But when he went inside to sleep, he left the door open. And when he woke at dawn, she was gone. He found her sitting on the edge of the well, staring into the dark water. Her fingers traced the rim. Over and over. Like she was listening. To something below. He didn't ask where she'd been. Didn't ask why her lips were trembling. He just handed her a blanket. And walked away. But that night, when the moon hung low and the wind died, he came back out. And there she was. Still sitting. Still silent. But now, her hand was pressed against the old iron bell hanging crooked on the porch. The bell no one had rung in 20 years. The bell that used to call folks to church before the preacher died and the town forgot God. She rang it. Once. Soft. A single chime. Then she stopped. Looked at him. And smiled. Not with her mouth. With her eyes. Like she knew he'd been watching. Like she'd been waiting. And for the first time since he buried his wife under the cottonwood tree, Thomas felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope. Or maybe guilt. He couldn't tell which. Wind howled she didn't speak. But the bell did. And in its echo, something answered. She worked like a ghost. Every morning before sunrise, she was already outside, chopping wood with a hatchet too heavy for her frame. She didn't complain. Didn't pause. Didn't wipe the sweat from her brow. Just swung. Again. Again. Until the pile grew tall enough to last 3 days. Thomas watched from the kitchen window. He'd seen boys half her age break down after an hour of labor. But she moved like she was carved from the same stone as the land, unyielding. Unbroken. At noon, she hauled water from the well. 2 buckets at a time. Straps dug into her shoulders till they bled. Still, she never stopped. Never asked for help. Never looked at him when he offered. He started leaving things for her. A red ribbon tied around a stick. One day, it was gone. The next morning, it sat neatly on his pillow. A button from his old coat, lost near the barn. Found 2 days later, tucked inside the hollow of the oak tree where he used to carve his wife's name. A dried apple. She ate it slowly. Took 3 bites. Left the core perfectly clean on the windowsill. He didn't know what to make of it. But he started watching closer. Not out of pity. Out of wonder. One afternoon, while mending fence wire, he noticed something strange. She would stop every time the wind picked up. Not to listen to it. To feel it. Her head would tilt. Eyes closed. Lips parted. And then, she'd smile. Just slightly. Like the wind had whispered something only she could hear. He thought it was madness. Until the day he heard it himself. It was late. Rain had come and gone. The air smelled of wet earth and burnt sage. He was stacking hay when he saw her standing by the church bell again. She wasn't ringing it. Just touching it. Her fingers traced the rusted edge. Slow. Deliberate. Like reading Braille. Then, she turned. Looked right at him. And raised one finger. To her ear. Then to the bell. Then to her chest. He didn't understand. But he remembered. That night, he took a hammer. Climbed the ladder. Untied the bell. Let it swing free. The next morning, he found her kneeling beside it. Her hands were raw. Her nails were cracked. And around the base of the bell. Tiny scratches. Not random. Patterns. Rows. Repeating. He knelt beside her. Didn't speak. She didn't look up. But she reached out. And placed his hand over hers. On the metal. Then she pressed her palm flat against the bell. And waited. He held his breath. Waited. And then, he felt it. A vibration. Faint. But there. Like a heartbeat trapped inside iron. He jerked his hand back. She didn't move. Just stared ahead. At the horizon. Where the sun rose like a wound in the sky. He went inside. Sat at the table. Stared at his coffee. Cold. Bitter. He thought about Jed. About the fire. About the coin. About how he'd bought her like livestock. And now. Now he was trying to learn her language. Not with words. With silence. With touch. With the echo of a bell. That week, he stopped calling her girl. Started saying, you. She never corrected him. But one night, as he washed his face at the basin, he caught her reflection in the mirror. She was holding the locket. The one he'd found tangled in her hair the first day. Silver. Dented. A tiny flower etched on the front. She opened it. Inside, a picture. Of a woman. Dark hair. High cheekbones. Eyes closed. And beneath it, a single word, scratched into the metal. Listen. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. She closed the locket. Pressed it to her heart. Then walked out. Into the dark. He followed. Found her at the well. Sitting cross-legged. Her hands cupped around the rim. And she was humming. No sound came out. But her lips moved. And her fingers tapped the stone. Tap tap. Tap tap tap. A rhythm. A pattern. Like Morse. Like prayer. Like memory. He stood there for a long time. Watching. Listening. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt heard. Fire crackles the next morning, he left a new thing for her. A tin whistle. Bought it in town. Thought maybe she could make music. She took it. Turned it over in her hands. Then pressed it to her lips. Puffed out her cheeks. Held it. For 10 seconds. 20. 30. Nothing. She lowered it. Looked at him. And shook her head. Not in disappointment. In understanding. As if she'd known all along, some songs don't need sound. Some voices don't need lungs. Some silences are the loudest things left. He came back on a Tuesday. No warning. No knock. Just the sound of hooves, hard, uneven, like a man riding drunk on purpose. Thomas was at the barn, mending a harness. He didn't look up until the shadow fell across his boots. Jed stood there. Taller than he remembered. Thinner. His face was a map of old scars and new bruises. One eye swollen shut. The other, bloodshot, wild, glittering with something worse than alcohol. He smelled like sweat and sin and burnt sugar. "Didn't think you'd still be here," Jed said. His voice was cracked, like dry bark. Thomas didn't answer. Just kept working. Jed stepped closer. Smelled the whiskey on his breath before Thomas even turned. "You got her," Jed muttered. "The deaf one." Thomas didn't move. "She ain't deaf." Jed laughed. "A wet, rattling thing." "Oh yeah? Then why is she silent as a grave?" Thomas finally looked up. "She don't speak." "Same damn thing." No, Thomas met his gaze. "She chose not to." Jed's grin faded. He reached into his coat. Pulled out a bottle. Not whiskey. Moonshine. Clear as glass. Smelled like poison. He unscrewed the cap. Took a long swig. Then held it out. "To your girl." Thomas didn't move. Jed shrugged. Drank again. Then, he tossed the bottle onto the hay. It shattered. Splinters of glass. Liquid pooling like blood. "She heard everything," Jed whispered. Thomas froze. "What?" "The fire." Jed's voice dropped low. Like he was telling a secret meant for dead men. "You think she was burned?" "Nah. She was there. Saw it all. Saw me drag her mother out by the hair. Saw the men come in. Saw them take her, before they set the torch." Thomas's throat tightened. He didn't breathe. Jed leaned in. His breath stank of rot. She screamed. Screamed till her lungs gave out. But when they lit the house, she stopped. Not because she was scared. Because she heard. "Hear what?" Thomas asked, voice raw. "The truth." Jed smiled. "She heard her mother whisper right before they killed her." Thomas's hands curled into fists. "Say it." Jed grinned. "Her mother told her. Run. Don't make a sound. If you scream, they'll kill you too." Silence. The wind outside died. Even the crickets stopped. Jed pulled a small object from his pocket. A locket. Identical to the one Thomas had found on the girl. He held it up. This was hers. Your girl's mama. I took it off her neck after they done what they done. Thomas stood. Slow. Eyes locked on the locket. Where'd you get that? Jed pointed to the house. She's the only one left who remembers her mother. Then, Jed's eyes darkened. I need money. Thomas didn't answer. He turned. Walked inside. Left Jed standing in the dust. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Set them on the table. One for him. One for Jed. Then he walked to the door. Opened it. Called out. Come here. No answer. He called again. Louder. Girl. A moment passed. Then, footsteps. Soft. Light. She appeared in the doorway. Barefoot. Hair tied back. Dust still clinging to her knees. She looked at Thomas. Then at Jed. Her eyes didn't widen. Didn't flicker. Just, held. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. For 7 years. Jed stood. Staggered toward her. Smiled. Hello, baby girl. She didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Didn't run. Just lifted her hand. And pointed. At the whiskey. At the glass. Then at her own throat. Then at the locket in Thomas's hand. Then, she closed her eyes. And shook her head. Once. Slow. Final. As if to say, I remember. But I won't speak. And you won't touch me. Jed's smile vanished. His hand twitched toward his belt. Thomas moved first. Grabbed the glass. Threw it. Shattered against Jed's chest. Whiskey splashed his shirt. Jed staggered back. Roared. Don't you dare. Thomas didn't wait. He lunged. Grabbed Jed by the collar. Dragged him outside. Into the yard. The girl followed. Quiet. Watching. Thomas shoved Jed hard. Hard enough to make him stumble. You want money? Thomas growled. Jed spat blood. Yeah. 10. Or I tell. Thomas nodded. Then, he pulled the revolver from his hip. Clicked the cylinder open. Empty. He tossed it aside. Then he stepped back. Raised his hands. Go ahead. Jed blinked. What? Tell them. Thomas pointed to the house. To the town. To the sheriff. To every damn soul in Blackwater. He looked at the girl. Then back at Jed. She's already told me everything. Jed's eyes darted to her. She stood perfectly still. Hand pressed over her heart. Locket glinting in the sun. Jed took a step toward her. Little bitch, Thomas didn't let him finish. He grabbed the broken bottle from the ground. Swung. Sharp. Fast. The glass sliced across Jed's throat. A thin red line. Then, blood. Dark. Thick. Sprayed across the dust. Jed gasped. Clutched his neck. Eyes wide. Not with pain. With shock. Like he hadn't believed Thomas would do it. Like he hadn't believed she would let him. He fell. Knees first. Then face. Into the dirt. Thomas stood over him. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. The girl walked forward. Kneeled beside him. Reached out. Not to touch his face. Not to pray. She took his hand. and placed it gently on the locket. Still warm. Still beating. With his last heartbeat. Then she stood. Turned. Looked at Thomas. And for the first time, she spoke. Not with words. With motion. She raised her hand. Pointed to the bell. Then to herself. Then to the sky. As if to say, they're listening. Gunshot echoes in distance somewhere, far away, a train whistle blew. Long low. Like a dirge. The girl didn't turn. Just walked back inside. Left Thomas standing over the body. Blood pooled beneath Jed. Mixing with dust. Turning red. Black. Forever. He looked at the bell. Then at the girl. Who sat now on the porch step. Hands folded. Eyes closed. Waiting. He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. He knew. She hadn't lost her voice. She'd buried it. So no one else would hear. And now. Now she'd let him hear. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he should thank God. Or beg for forgiveness. The storm came at midnight. Not with rain. Not with thunder. But with silence. The kind that comes after a scream has been swallowed whole. Thomas sat by the fire, staring at his hands. They still smelled like blood. Not his own. Not Jed's. The smell of it clung, like guilt soaked into skin. He'd washed them twice. Scrubbed with lye soap till they cracked. Still, the scent lingered. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jed's face, not twisted in pain, but stunned. Like he hadn't believed Thomas would do it. Like he hadn't believed she would let him. She was asleep on the floor near the hearth. Wrapped in the same blanket she'd taken from the wagon that first night. Her breathing was slow. Even. Peaceful. As if death had come and gone, and left her untouched. Thomas rose. Walked to the door. Opened it. The wind howled through the pines like a choir of lost souls. He stepped out. Barefoot. Cold earth bit into his soles. He looked up. Stars. Thousands of them. No moon. Just darkness. And the bell. Swinging slightly in the breeze. Still warm from Jed's blood. He walked to it. Touched the metal. It was sticky. He wiped it on his pants. Didn't care. He lifted the clapper. Let it drop. Clang. One note. Echoed across the valley. Then, silence. Again. He did it again. Clang. Louder. This time, the sound didn't fade. It answered. From the house. A soft tap. Tap tap. On the windowpane. He turned. There she stood. In the doorway. Naked feet. Hair loose. Eyes wide. Not afraid. Alert. Like she'd been waiting for the signal. He rang the bell again. Clang. She moved. Not toward him. Away. Into the dark. He followed. Past the well. Past the barn. To the edge of the ridge. Where the land dropped off into blackness. She stopped. Turned. Looked at him. Then raised both hands. Pressed them flat against the cold stone wall beside her. And waited. He didn't understand. Until, he felt it. A vibration. Through the rock. Faint. Rhythmic. Like footsteps. Or, fingers. Tapping. Tap tap tap. Tap tap. Tap 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 tap. A pattern. He knew it. He'd heard it before. At the well. In the dirt. On the bell. It was the same rhythm. The same code. He remembered now. His wife used to hum it. Before she died. When she was sick. Sitting by the window. Tapping her fingers on the sill. Tap tap tap. Tap tap. A song. A prayer. A message. He whispered it. I love you. Her lips parted. For the first time since he found her, she spoke. Not with voice. With motion. She pressed her palm to her chest. Then to the rock. Then pointed to the sky. Then to herself. Then to him. And then, she tapped. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. Tap tap tap. He knew what it meant. His wife had taught him. Before the fever took her. If you can't speak, tap it out. 3 taps means, I'm here. 2 taps means, I'm scared. 1 tap, means, remember me. She was saying, I'm here. And then, she reached into her dress. Pulled out the locket. Opened it. Held it up. Inside, the picture. The woman. The flower. And beneath it, the word. Listen. She closed it. Pressed it to her heart. Then turned. Walked back toward the house. Without looking back. Thomas stood there. Alone. Wind biting his skin. Rain finally came. Not drops. But sheets. Cold. Hard. Washing the blood from the bell. Washing the dust from her feet. Washing everything. He didn't move. Didn't run. Didn't cry. He just stood. And listened. To the rain. To the wind. To the silence between them. And somewhere, deep inside, he heard her. Not with ears. With soul. She wasn't broken. She was listening. And now, she was teaching him how to hear. The next morning, the town came. 4 men. On horseback. Sheriff Rourke. Preacher Hale. 2 ranchers. They rode straight to the porch. Found Jed's body. Blood dried. Flies buzzing. Rourke knelt. Lifted the body. Turned it. Looked at Thomas. You kill him? Thomas didn't answer. The girl stood behind him. Quiet. Still. Rourke's eyes flicked to her. Then back to Thomas. She see it? Thomas nodded. Rourke spat. Good. He stood. Dusted off his knees. Gonna bury him where the crows won't land. He turned to leave. Then paused. Looked at the girl. You gonna be alright, child? She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared ahead. At the bell. Rourke sighed. Poor thing. He mounted his horse. Left. The preacher stayed. Sat on the step. Didn't pray. Just watched. Then, he reached into his coat. Pulled out a small wooden box. Set it on the ground. For the dead, he said. Thomas didn't take it. The girl did. She opened it. Inside, a single white candle. And a scrap of paper. Written in shaky ink, "May your silence be holy." She looked at the preacher. Then at Thomas. Then, she lit the candle. With a match from her pocket. She'd kept it. All this time. She set it on the porch rail. Let it burn. No wind touched it. No smoke curled wrong. Just pure flame. Golden. Still. The preacher watched. Then stood. Walked away. Without a word. That night, Thomas carried Jed's body to the ridge. Buried him under the old oak. No coffin. No marker. Just stones. He dug until his hands bled. She helped. Without speaking. Without stopping. When it was done, she pulled something from her dress. A small piece of leather. Tied around a string. She handed it to him. He opened it. Inside, a lock of hair. Dark. Long. And a tiny note. Written in charcoal. Mama. He didn't cry. He couldn't. But his chest cracked open. Like a dry riverbed splitting under a storm. He took her hand. Led her back to the house. Sat with her by the fire. Stared into the flames. And whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't answer. Didn't nod. Didn't smile. She just reached out. Placed her hand over his. And tapped. Once. Tap. He knew what it meant. It's okay. But it wasn't. It never would be. Wind howls, the bell hung above them. Swinging gently. Still stained. Still silent. Still alive. And for the first time, Thomas realized, she hadn't lost her voice. She'd given it to the wind. To the earth. To the bell. And now, she was giving it to him. They left at dawn. No wagon. No horses. Just 2 pairs of boots, a sack of bread, the bell, and the locket. Thomas carried the bell. Strapped to his back with rope. It was heavy. Not because of metal. Because of memory. She walked barefoot. Dust clung to her soles. She didn't flinch. Didn't wince. Like the ground remembered her. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. Every step told a story. The road stretched south, toward Mercy. A town named for Mercy. But no one had seen Mercy there in years. The preacher had whispered it once, over whiskey, "Mercy's got a church that still rings its bell every Sunday. Used to be the only sound in 10 miles. Now. Just echoes." He'd said it like a prayer. Thomas hadn't believed him. Until now. They slept under stars. Ate cold bread. Drank from puddles. She never complained. Never asked. Always stopped when the wind changed. Always touched the bell before bed. Sometimes she rang it. Once. Soft. As if saying good night. Other nights, she didn't touch it at all. Just sat. Staring at the sky. Like she was listening to something far away. On the 5th day, they passed a graveyard. Overgrown. Crosses leaning. Names worn away by time. She stopped. Kneeled. Placed her palm on the earth. Closed her eyes. Stayed like that for 10 minutes. When she rose, she turned to Thomas. And pointed. To the largest grave. The one with no name. Just a carving. Of a bell. She tapped her chest. Then the grave. Then the bell on his back. Then she smiled. Not with lips. With eyes. She knew. She knew this place. Knew who lay here. Not Jed. Not her mother. Someone else. Someone who'd been silent too. Thomas didn't ask. He just sat beside her. Let the silence sit between them. Like an old friend. That night, rain came again. Cold. Relentless. They took shelter under a collapsed barn. She curled against his side. Warm. Small. Alive. He wrapped his coat around her. Didn't sleep. Watched the fire die. Watched her breathe. And thought, what did she hear that first night? The crackle of flames? The screams? Or, the quiet after? He reached into his pocket. Felt the locket. Opened it. Looked at the woman. Her face soft. Eyes closed. Like she was sleeping. Like she was waiting. He whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't save you." He didn't expect an answer. But she moved. Sat up. Turned to him. Pressed her hand to his chest. Right over his heart. Then, she lifted her own hand. Tapped. Once. On his skin. Tap. Then, she placed her palm flat against his. And pressed. Harder. Longer. Until he felt it. The vibration. Through bone. Through blood. Through silence. She wasn't tapping. She was singing. Not with voice. With rhythm. With heartbeat. With memory. And then, she leaned forward. Resting her forehead against his. Breath warm. Lips parted. Not speaking. Just, breathing. Together. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. He felt known. The next morning, the sun rose red. Like blood on snow. They walked into Mercy at noon. The town was small. 2 stores. A saloon. A blacksmith. And a church. White wood. Peeling paint. A crooked steeple. And above it, the bell. Same shape. Same rust. Same silence. People stared. Whispered. Some crossed themselves. One child ran inside screaming, "Deaf girl." Thomas didn't care. He kept walking. To the church. The door was open. Inside, empty pews. Dust on the altar. Candles burned low. And at the front, a single figure. An old woman. Bent as a willow. Wearing a bonnet. Hands folded. Eyes closed. Praying. She didn't look up when they entered. But when Thomas set the bell down, she opened her eyes. And wept. Not loud. Just slow. Tears rolling down her cheeks. Like she'd been waiting 70 years. She stood. Shaky. Slow. Walked to the bell. Touched it. With trembling fingers. Then turned to the girl. Looked at her. Really looked. And whispered, "You're her." The girl nodded. The old woman stepped forward. Reached out. Not to touch her. To touch the locket. The one around the girl's neck. She traced the flower. Then the word. "Listen." She gasped. Sank to her knees. Clutched the girl's hand. "Mary," she sobbed. "My sister's daughter." Thomas froze. Mary. The name on the locket. Not just a word. A person. A soul. The old woman raised her head. Looked at Thomas. "You bought her." He nodded. She didn't speak. She couldn't, the woman whispered. "Not after what they did." Thomas swallowed. "What happened?" The woman closed her eyes. Took her mother. Raped her. Then burned the house. She looked at the girl. "My sister," she sang to her before they killed her. She reached into her dress. Pulled out a piece of paper. Yellowed. Folded. Unfolded it. Handwritten. In elegant script, "My sweet Mary, if you hear this, I am gone. But you are not alone. The bell remembers. The wind carries my voice. When you tap 3 times. I am there. Always. Mama, Thomas's breath caught. The girl reached out. Took the letter. Held it to her chest. Then, she walked to the bell. Reached up. Touched the clapper. Drew back. Then, she struck it. Once. Clang. The sound rolled through the church. Echoed off the walls. Rattled the windows. The old woman cried harder. The boy downstairs ran upstairs, eyes wide. By sundown, half the town was outside the church. Men. Women. Children. All standing. Silent. Waiting. The girl walked out. Barefoot. Bell on her back. Locket in her hand. She stopped. Looked at them. Then, she raised her hand. And tapped. On the bell. Tap. 1 note. 1 beat. 1 truth. Then, she let go. Let the bell swing. Let it ring. Clang. Again. Clang. Again. Clang. Louder. Stronger. Until the whole valley shook. People fell to their knees. Some prayed. Some wept. One man dropped to the dirt and screamed, "She's not dead." Another shouted, "She heard us all along." Thomas stood back. Watching. Not as savior. Not as master. As witness. She rang the bell. 20 times. 30. 40. Each chime a memory. Each echo a voice. Finally, she stopped. Breathing hard. Face wet. Eyes bright. She turned. Walked to Thomas. And held out her hand. He took it. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. She pulled him toward the bell. And pressed his palm against the metal. Then hers. Side by side. And tapped. Once. Tap. He understood. I'm here. He kissed her forehead. Not like a father. Not like a master. Like a man who'd finally learned how to listen. That night, they stayed in the church. The old woman gave them blankets. The children brought bread. No one spoke to her. No one asked questions. They just waited. Waited for her to speak. Waited for her to sing. And when she did, she didn't use words. She used the bell. Every morning. Every evening. She rang it. And the town answered. With taps. With knocks. With hearts beating in time. 1 week later, they buried Mary's mother. Under the oak tree. No marker. Just a bell. Carved into stone. And beneath it, 1 word. Listen. Thomas sold everything. The ranch. The horses. The guns. Kept only the bell. And the girl. They left Mercy at sunrise. Headed west. No destination. Just motion. Just silence. Just sound. One evening, as the sun bled gold behind the mountains, she stopped. Turned. Looked at him. Raised her hand. Pressed it gently, against his chest. Over his heart. Then tapped. 3 times. Tap tap tap. He smiled. And tapped back. Tap tap tap. She smiled. Then, she reached into her dress. Pulled out the locket. Opened it. Looked at her mother's face. Then closed it. And pressed it into his hand. He looked down. At the locket. Then at her. She pointed to the bell. Then to herself. Then to him. And then, she pointed to the horizon. Where the land met the sky. And tapped. Once. Tap. He knew. We go on. He tucked the locket into his coat. Close to his heart. And took her hand. They walked. No words. No fear. No ghosts. Just the sound of boots on dust. And the bell. Swinging softly. Behind them. Still ringing. Still remembering. Still alive. Wind howls somewhere, far off, a train whistle blew. Long low. Like a lullaby. And for the first time, Thomas didn't hear the silence. He heard her. Not with ears. With soul. And she heard him. Back. Always. Final bell tolls, fades into silence.